who are planning your budget. Unfortunately, I have been corrected in my misunderstanding. The planning is done there, but the actual decision-making is done here, and I should have been here with the decision-makers at the time to plead the case of the grand jury. As you look at the ordinance before you, the one you're being asked to consider, the last portion of that ordinance is taken almost directly from state law. I would call to your attention, and I'm sure Ms. Nadell would agree with this, that Penal Code Section 914.5 puts the authority for spending the money into the hands of the presiding judge. And it provides that the grand jury foreperson, or in this case, the grand jury foreperson, come before you and advise you when it begins to appear that we're going to run through that budget. But the actual decision for how the money is going to be spent resides in the hands of the presiding judge. So this is an advise, not necessarily advise and consent type situation. And it's something I don't think the board was aware of before. And I wanted to make sure I brought that to y'all's attention so there would not be a misunderstanding to that nature.
I certainly don't want to set up a process to where people in the rural areas of this county need not apply to be a grand jury. You know, I don't want to limit that. Supervisor Smith.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I concur with that as well. I applaud the grand jury in that you're trying to go to all of the communities in the county and attract jurors. The bottom line financial issue, though, I think is another matter, and I think that there's a disconnect between conveying your concerns about the funds and having funds materialize in the manner that you're requesting. I mean, almost on a weekly basis, in one way or another, we hear from department heads about inadequacy. I'm using your words here. We advise the CEO's office of the inadequacy of the proposed budget. We are constantly I mean, every piece of paper that comes across my desk right now, in one way or another, addresses an inadequacy of either staffing, funding. I mean, it is a challenge to absolutely digest it all. It is comprehensive, from federal agencies, state agencies, interfaces with regulatory agencies. We hear it from our own internal departments. Everyone knows there's an inadequacy of funding. So I think that what I haven't seen, and it doesn't appear to be in your documents, nor communicated to us from the CEO's office, with the exception of some minor cost-saving strategies, the disconnect is in that we've been asking department heads for years to do more with less. That's the constant mantra that this board, the previous board, has given them, and we continue to do that. It's a very excruciatingly painful level that we're asking everyone to do that. So I think that in respecting that we have a large county with costs of getting those jurors to the county, that's a huge challenge. But there are ways to deal with that. I think, unfortunately, what needs to be looked at is that the frequency of your meetings or the number of topics that you choose to take up. Those are discretionary in nature. So I think that you have to adjust your workload, your sphere of discussion, to meet the constraints of the budget. I mean, that's another approach that I don't see being delineated here. What I see being delineated here is that we've got this mission, we've got these numbers of folks, and this is the only way we can do our job. And we have asked department heads on a number of levels for reaching staffing levels to approach the problem differently. And so I think that's an aspect of what needs to be looked at, as well as the complexity of the job is, to a large degree, what you make of it. So I think that's the area of concern that I think needs to be addressed, not just, well, here are the bottom line dollars and this is what it's cost. Another note, my understanding is the mileage rate has now dropped, so it is no longer 0.585 as of January 1st, so that'll be a small budget savings issue. But it's discretionary to have things like meals. Meals, you know, they're not provided to supervisors that do, you know, sometimes 48-hour stints here, or even more, and meals are not included. So I think there's ways that you could address cost savings and cost containment with respect to how those funds are delivered and the degree that you choose to meet as a body. There are a number of things you could do so we can make sure that North County and coastal representatives are fully represented on the grand jury. So I think that's not being delineated here from what I'm reading.
No, perhaps not to the extent that you would like. I would note that for 21 years that I'm aware of, the grand jury fee has been $10 for a meeting and $25 for a full panel meeting, and reimbursement of lunch cost of $9. Has there been any other department in the county government that has held its budget on those kind of costs static for 21 years? I don't think so. And we're not asking for an increase here. We're asking for a confirmation of the status quo. In terms of looking at the individuals who serve on the grand jury as employees, I believe that's a mistake. And your reference here does tend to draw that inference. We're not employees. We don't draw a salary. We are all volunteers. The way you get on the grand jury, you fill out an application and say, I'm willing to give up my life for a year or more, as the case may be, to serve my fellow citizens in the county of Mendocino. I'm willing to lay it on the line and take on a job that few people are willing to take on, to address issues that many people do not wish to be addressed in public, but need to be addressed in public to provide transparency to the governmental operations of this county. And to that end, there has to be some form of recompense to defray the cost. Many of the jurors you'll find bring in their own supplies and materials to deal with the cost. They address these issues using their life's experiences, and that's how the issues arise. They address citizen complaints. Much of the agenda of the grand jury, in terms of what we investigate, comes directly from the citizens of this county who file a complaint with us. And we go forward and look at those things. Certain of the agenda items do come out of other things, our own personal experiences, what we've read in the newspaper if it causes a issue to appear, and the certain things we're required to look at, such as the jails and the in the area of the county that are being run in the county. To limit the grand jury's operations by use of the budget is something that the state legislature in its wisdom has said should not happen. Otherwise, we would not have the existence of Penal Code 914.5. It says the power of the purse essentially will not stop the grand jury from operating. That's the end result of that particular code section. And to that end, what I'm here to do today is to advise you we will exceed this budget. We've already exceeded the line item considerably for travel. I don't see any way to save the money for that. The steps we have taken, we've actually decreased the amount that we're having to spend per person on travel as a percentage from last year by limiting the number of committees that each one of the jurors serves on. And this is addressed in the letter that's attached to, that was given to you with this. We've taken steps that we can to control it. The reduction, as you mentioned, in the per mileage rate is only 3 cents a mile, 3.5 cents a mile. It's going to 55 cents a mile is my understanding. It will be a minor savings at best. It may help us contain some of the costs. But nonetheless, we are going to exceed our budget. And I'm advising you of that now. I've also already advised the presiding judge of this fact, so the presiding judge will be the one who's going to authorize whether or not we can continue to spend it. As to how that negotiation to be handled, the new ordinance does provide for Mr. Mitchell to have a chance to make a presentation to the judge about what the county thinks the budget should be. I have already made my presentation to the judge about what I think that we're going to end up spending. We've contained costs, I believe, as best we can. You need to remember that when you're dealing with the grand jury, there is no essential organizational memory, because each year you have a new group of people there. Each year you have essentially a new foreperson there at the grand jury. There is no clerical help. We gave that up in a cost-saving move 2 years ago. So we have no way of having this institutional memory carrying forward other than what appears in public record, and for those people to come back over and over again to give their time to the jury. This year we happen to have 2 members who have served more than 7 terms on a grand jury. That shows you the dedication of the people we have in this county who are willing to give up their time and effort to support the needs and promote transparency in government, which is a theme I believe we've already addressed one time in this meeting earlier today.
Thank you.
Well, additionally, you know, there are